George Foreman's passing has left a huge loss, not just in the boxing world, but everywhere. People didn't just admire him for his incredible fights. They were drawn to his personal journey, the way he grew and changed over the years. That's what made him so special. His death isn't just a loss. It feels like the world just isn't the same without him. The exact cause of George Foreman's passing hasn't been shared, but his family has confirmed that he peacefully left us on March 21st, 2025. It's heartbreaking to know that he took his last breath in a hospital in Houston, Texas, the city he called home for so many years. While the world mourns the loss of a true legend, his incredible legacy, both inside and outside the boxing ring, will never be forgotten. He started his career in a way that no one else ever had, and that played a huge role in shaping him into the legend he became. Foreman's journey to becoming a boxing legend started in 1969 when he turned professional with a powerful 3-round knockout of Donald Walheim in New York City. That year alone, he had 13 fights, winning every single one, 11 of them by knockout. His dominance continued into 1970 as he won another 12 fights, again with 11 knockouts. One of his toughest early opponents was Gregorio Peralta, who exposed some of Foreman's weaknesses, particularly against quick counterpunches. However, Foreman still came out on top, proving he was ready for bigger challenges. In 1971, Foreman continued his unstoppable rise, winning 7 more fights, all by knockout. His rematch against Peralta ended with a knockout in the final round, and by the time he racked up a record of 32-0, he was officially ranked as the #1 contender for the heavyweight title. His opportunity to fight for the championship finally came in 1972 against Joe Frazier, the undefeated and undisputed heavyweight champion. Despite Foreman's size and power, most people didn't expect him to win. He was the underdog, with odds stacked at 3-1 against him. But on January 22nd, 1973, in Kingston, Jamaica, Foreman shocked the world. The fight, famously called the Sunshine Showdown, saw him dominate Frazier, knocking him down 6 times within 2 rounds before the referee stopped the fight. The moment became legendary, with commentator Howard Cosell repeatedly shouting, "Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!" With that victory, Foreman was the new heavyweight champion of the world. However, he wasn't exactly seen as the most media-friendly champion. Many thought he was cold and distant, but Foreman later admitted he was just trying to mimic Sonny Liston, his former sparring partner. Foreman defended his title twice with ease. His first defense in Tokyo saw him knock out Jose Roman in just 2 minutes. His second defense, in 1974, was against Ken Norton, a tough fighter known for breaking Muhammad Ali's jaw in a previous match. Norton started strong, but in the second round, Foreman overwhelmed him, knocking him down twice before the referee stopped the fight. With a perfect 40-0 record and 37 knockouts, Foreman seemed unbeatable. Then came the fight that changed everything, the Rumble in the Jungle. On October 30th, 1974, in Kinshasa, Zaire, Foreman faced Muhammad Ali. Foreman was the clear favourite, having crushed both Frazier and Norton with ease. But Ali had a different plan. Instead of running from Foreman's power, he leaned against the ropes and let Foreman throw punch after punch, a strategy later known as the rope-a-dope. Round after round, Foreman kept swinging, but Ali kept blocking and countering. As Foreman grew tired, Ali saw his moment. In the 8th round, he unleashed a series of quick punches, sending Foreman crashing to the canvas. It was the first time Foreman had ever been knocked down, and just like that, his reign as champion was over. Foreman later admitted it just wasn't his night. He also believed he had been drugged before the fight, though no proof ever surfaced. He wanted a rematch with Ali, but it never happened. Some believed Ali was avoiding him, while others pointed out that Ali was busy fighting other tough opponents. Regardless, the loss marked a turning point in Foreman's career. He'd gone from being an unstoppable force to a fallen champion. But his story was far from over. After his crushing loss to Ali, Foreman needed a way to rebuild his reputation. In 1975, he came up with a bold idea, an exhibition event called Foreman vs. 5, where he'd take on 5 fighters in one night. The goal was to prove he was still the most dangerous man in boxing. But right from the start, the event had problems. The opponents weren't top contenders. They were mostly unknown or journeymen. Fans weren't impressed. On fight night, as Foreman walked to the ring, he was greeted with boos and chants of Ali, Ali, Ali. The energy was hostile, and it only got worse. Foreman knocked out his first 3 opponents quickly, but instead of cheers, he got jeers. Fans saw it as a weak spectacle. Frustrated, he started arguing with Ali, who was ringside doing commentary with Howard Cosell. Ali taunted Foreman, even shouting advice to his opponents mid-fight. By the time Foreman reached the last 2 fighters, he was drained. He couldn't knock them out, and the crowd erupted in cheers for the underdogs. What was meant to be his big comeback ended in embarrassment. People questioned if he still had it. That doubt didn't sit well with Foreman. In 1976, he officially announced his return, setting his sights on a rematch with Ali. First, he had to prove himself, and his first challenge was a brutal one. Ron Lyle. Lyle was no pushover. He had given Ali trouble and was ranked the number 1, 5 heavyweight in the world. The fight was a war. In the opening rounds, Lyle rocked Foreman with powerful punches, even knocking him down twice. But Foreman, bloodied and battered, refused to stay down. In the 5th round, both fighters were exhausted, but Foreman found one last burst of energy. He unleashed a relentless attack, landing a dozen unanswered punches until Lyle collapsed. It was over. Foreman had won by knockout in what the ring called the fight of the year. With momentum on his side, Foreman went after a familiar face, Joe Frazier. Their first fight had been a massacre, with Foreman knocking Frazier down 6 times in 2 rounds. But this time, Frazier came in with a new strategy, bobbing and weaving to avoid Foreman's heavy shots. It worked for a while, but eventually Foreman's power took over. In the 5th round, he knocked Frazier down twice, and the fight was stopped. It was another dominant win, but something was different. Foreman wasn't the same wrecking machine he once was. After a few more wins, Foreman faced Jimmy Young in 1977. Young was a slick, skilled fighter who had nearly beaten Ali the year before. Foreman struggled, unable to land his knockout shots. In the later rounds, exhaustion set in. Young knocked him down in the 12th round, and Foreman lost by unanimous decision. But the biggest moment of the night happened after the fight. In his dressing room, Foreman felt something was wrong. Overcome with exhaustion and heat stroke, he collapsed. What happened next changed his life forever. Foreman later described it as a near-death experience. He felt himself slipping away into a dark, empty void. It was terrifying. He said he pleaded with God, promising to change his life if he got another chance. At that moment, he felt a presence telling him to turn his life around. He listened. Foreman didn't just walk away from boxing. He walked towards something new. He became a born-again Christian and devoted his life to ministry. He started preaching on street corners, eventually becoming the pastor of the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ in Houston. He opened a youth center and worked to help troubled kids, leaving behind the violent world of boxing for a life of faith. It seemed like the end of Foreman's boxing story. But as the world would later find out, George Foreman wasn't done just yet. After a decade away from the ring, Foreman shocked the world in 1987 by announcing his comeback. At 38 years old. People thought he was crazy. But Foreman had 2 big reasons. He needed money to support his youth centre, and he wanted a shot at Mike Tyson. He stepped back into the ring in Sacramento, knocking out journeyman Steve Zewski in 4 rounds. Foreman was heavy and out of shape, but he kept winning, slowly shedding weight and proving age wasn't a deal breaker. By 1989, Foreman had become more than just a fighter. He was a pop culture star. He started endorsing products, cracking jokes on talk shows, and even made friends with Muhammad Ali. But he was still winning fights. In 1990, he took on Jerry Cooney, knocking him out in the 2nd round. The message was clear: Big George was back. A year later, he got his shot at the heavyweight title against Evander Holyfield. Most thought Foreman had no chance, but he surprised everyone by going the full 12 rounds. Holyfield won by decision, but Foreman had earned respect. He kept fighting, even taking a brutal beating from Alex Stewart, but still walking away with a win. In 1993, he challenged Tommy Morrison for the WBO title, but Morrison outboxed him, leaving Foreman without a belt. Then came 1994. Michael Moorer was the new heavyweight champ, and Foreman wanted one last shot. For 9 rounds, Moorer dominated. But in the 10th, Foreman landed a perfect right hand, knocking Moorer out cold. At 45, Foreman was the oldest fighter to ever win a heavyweight title. The moment was legendary. He dropped to his knees in prayer as the crowd erupted. Foreman's reign didn't last long. Controversial decisions followed, including a disputed win over Axel Schultz. He refused a rematch and was stripped of his belt, but he kept fighting. In 1997, he faced Shannon Briggs, and even though most people thought Foreman won, the judges gave the victory to Briggs. At 48, Foreman decided he was done with boxing. He thought about making a comeback in 1999 and again in 2004, but it never happened. Instead, he became a well-known boxing commentator and, of course, made a fortune with the George Foreman grill. His boxing days were over, but his big personality kept him in the spotlight. That's a wrap for today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.